It's your boy Gsluke here for our round 3 prize picks targets for this year's PGA Championship. We'll be going over my top 5 props here for Saturday to help you build your own slips and give you an idea of what to expect in terms of playing conditions. Here for round 2 wasn't really our best performance, ended up going 2-2-1, so 2 wins, 2 losses, and a tie. In terms of our core 3, the 3 guys we took the under on strokes, ended up going 2 wins and 1 push, so ended up hitting on that card. Also, a few of the other 3 to 4 leg power plays and flex plays that I entered ended up hitting on a few of those, so it wasn't a completely lost day, but of course not what we're looking for, right? At least trying to hit 3 out of these 5 props, if not upwards of 4 to 5. That's when you start to win upwards of 5, maybe even 10 to 15 units on a day. So still chasing that big payday, but really haven't, gotten killed all that much here in the first 2 rounds. What we'll do here, like I said, is go over my top 5 props, but also a little bit of the research here for round 3. And rounds 1 and 2, the wind was really the main factor that helped us with making our decisions. Here for round 3, there's a different factor in place. I don't want to give away too much right now, but weather is going to rear its ugly head once again. So with a lot to get into, a lot of research to uncover here, let's go ahead and get on into it. All right, I've got Data Golf on the screen so we can talk a little bit about how the course played. And like we expected, was going to be easier to play in the afternoon wave rather than the morning, which is a little bit counterintuitive than most slates that we look at. But in the morning, the course played to rate about 3 shots over par. That's when we had those 30 to 40 mile an hour wind gusts. And then in the afternoon, when it calmed down, we saw a scoring average closer to 2. Now, something to note is in the morning, birdies were a lot harder to come by, but scoring wasn't outrageous, right? I thought it could get close to 4, maybe even 4.5 strokes over par, but it stayed, relatively neutral, right? Towards 3 over par, which was actually similar to what we saw Thursday afternoon. So while it was difficult, right, it wasn't outrageously difficult. In the afternoon when the winds kicked down, it actually ended up being easier than what we saw on Thursday morning. A lot of that was due to pin location. They, of course, also didn't mow the greens, which was a little bit of an X factor we didn't know about until the slate locked. So in general, here for Saturday's round, without any weather, right, I'd expect it to get even more difficult because the winds aren't nearly as strong as what we saw there on Friday morning. They're going to be able to cut these greens, which means that they're going to be firmer, a little bit less receptive, and of course probably running a little bit faster. But there's a huge curveball thrown into play. With the weather tomorrow, there is a huge thunderstorms, or I should say set of thunderstorms going through the Tulsa area. You're going to have anywhere from 2 to 3 separate huge thunderstorms where you have these 3 little petals down here of raindrops throughout the day. One is towards 2 a.m., which is actually cut off on this graphic right here, but you can see another set coming through 7, 8 a.m., and then another set coming in right around midday. Now, they're thunderstorms. They're calling for thunderstorms, not just rain showers, which means we could see a delay in play. And if that happens, and I do expect there to be a delay, whether it's they're not actually teeing off at 8, 9 a.m. like they're expecting to, or whether they start play and actually have to halt it for at least an hour or 2, I think they're going to take the players off the field at some point, or off the course, I should say. And if that happens, you could see a majority of players, even though they have set tee times right now, right around 9 to 10 a.m., teeing off closer to 12 and 1 p.m., where usually that would be a disadvantage, but it's just after a huge rainstorm. And if you know anything about playing on a wet golf course, it is much easier, particularly on a difficult golf course, to play on a wet and receptive course than a firm and fast golf course. And if they can go out there, have no problem at all hitting fairways, of course, also sticking the ball close on greens, I could see the scoring average going in the opposite direction, right? So rather than it getting harder as the week goes on, I could see Saturday being a very scoreable round. So it does come down to the weather. It does come down to whether there's going to be a little bit of a delay here. But based on the forecast that we see, if you go on weather.com, of course, this is Wind Finder, which is a little bit better for actually looking at wind gusts. You can see that there is a little bit of wind during the day. It's similar to what we saw in rounds 1 and 2, though, so it's not going to be a huge difference there. They even have the precipitation on there. So pretty much no matter what source you're looking at, pretty much looks like there's no matter what going to be a delay. And like I said, that's actually favorable for these guys. If they had to play through the wind, through the weather and whatnot, it would be a little bit of a problem. We saw that at the Wells Fargo Championship, but they didn't call for thunderstorms at all there, right? It was all just rainstorms throughout the weekend, just a drizzle actually for even pretty much the entire weekend. This is a different animal. These are actual storms that are coming through. So just look forward to it a little bit of a delay tomorrow. I shouldn't say look forward to it because it is a little bit of a bummer for us, but it's the cards that were dealt. So what we're going to do here is hop into the prize picks board. Over here on the right, we just have 3 props for now. We will be talking about 5 just because these are my core 3. Just want to make that clear. A lot of times when I'm entering cards, it's not just the 5-leg card that I give you. It's a lot of, my core picks, right? Kind of like I'm giving you right here. Also mixed in with other sports, also props, other props that I like on the board. So just want to make it abundantly clear that these 3 picks are, of course, a lot more quote-unquote confident than the other guys that I have. So first off, we have Collin Morikawa at 2.5 birdies. He's somebody who's really struggled to make any birdies to this point, and that's why he's down here at 2.5 birdies. The fact of the matter is, though, he's one of the best players in the world, and for him to be priced at the same mark as some of the guys at the bottom of the board, like a Matt Kuchar, Kevin Na, even Aaron Wise, Cameron Tringale, while they aren't below average players, right, they're still solid tour players. They are nowhere near the same level of player as a Collin Morikawa, and the only reason Morikawa has struggled to this point is just cashing in with the putter. He's been great off the tee. He's been hitting plenty of fairways, which is particularly useful at this golf course. But even more so, he's an iron specialist. I mean, goes out there, gains a ton of strokes on the irons, right, from that 150 to 200 yard range. And that's exactly what we're going to need tomorrow with extremely receptive conditions, with likely very soft greens after a potential rain delay. He could go out there and throw darts all day, right? So rather than having to deal with firm, fast conditions where he's hitting it to 10 to 15 feet all day, perhaps he's hitting it to 5 to 7 feet all day, and even a putter as shaky as Collin Morikawa is still going to cash in a handful of times there. So I like the ball striking, especially if we have some receptive conditions. I think that plays directly into Collin Morikawa's game, and if it is windy, they still have to play through some of those conditions. He's shown an ability to be able to handle that type of thing in the past. So not something that I'm holding against him. Next up, we're talking about Xander Schauffele, also at the 2.5 mark. You can see Victor Hovland, who we're talking about here in a second, is also at the 2.5 mark. But love everyone down at 2.5. That's just seemingly mispriced. In fact, I would expect these lines to move at some point, especially, the Xander Schauffele and the Hovland lines, which we'll talk about here in a second. But Xander Schauffele playing some excellent golf after round 1 was -2. Today, struggled a little bit, but, it's a difficult golf course. The scoring average today was still 2.6 shots over par. So, even though he did struggle, that's kind of the average here, right? It's a difficult golf course. You're going to have a hard time scrapping by. And while he didn't make a ton of birdies today, I'd expect him to bounce back, kind of similar to a Collin Morikawa. The ball striking has been there. He's been solid in pretty much every single category. Just hasn't had that really flashy round to this point. So I expect that to come here in the 3rd round. Like I said, with the receptive conditions, moving day pins, it's a day you have to go out there and be aggressive, try and actually move up the board. I'd expect these type of guys to really put the pedal to the metal. Of course, they've already made the cut at this tournament, right? They don't have to worry about actually missing the weekend. They're elite tier players. They don't care about finishing in the top 40 or 50 of a major championship. For them, it is all about top 25 and top 10 are, of course, winning or bust, right? And for Collin Morikawa, Xander Schauffele, their position on the leaderboard right now to get into contention, they got to make some birdies, right? So I'd expect them to go out there, have that aggressive nature, and given that they're some of the best players in the world to begin with, top 15 players in the world, I don't think it's too much of a stretch to say that they get to the 3 birdie mark. And now lastly, we have Victor Hovland, who's a very similar player to Xander Schauffele and Morikawa. Another player that gains a ton of strokes off the tee, also with his irons. And to this point, maybe hasn't had the most impressive performance, right? In terms of birdie production, kind of similar to a Collin Morikawa, just hasn't made enough putts, but is still hitting a ton of fairways, a ton of greens. And he's somebody who's used to the windy conditions. So, of course, from Oklahoma State, lives in the Oklahoma State area over there at Stillwater, right about an hour away from the golf course. So just a lot of things going for him. In fact, all 3 of these players have projected for over 3.5 birdies tomorrow, making them some of my favorite props I've ever taken on Prize Picks. So I just think that the board's mispriced, right? If you take a look at it, it's accounting for just a day of solid wind. And the fact of the matter is those storms might delay play, and they might be playing an extremely soft golf course in the afternoon. And even if it's windy, if you do have 30-mile-an-hour wind gusts, if it's soft, they're going to go out there and make birdies. When they're able to calculate the wind directly or playing downwind, it's going to be target practice. They're still going to be hitting it to 5 to 10 feet. So just absolutely love these props. They're, again, some of the most confident that I've had for quite some time. And now lastly, let's talk about the 2 fades. So as per usual, we're going to take 3 supportive stances for players and then 2 stances against players. And we have a new prop on the board. It's going to be birdie or better matchups. Essentially, you bet whoever you think makes more birdies in a group. Now, just to give you an example, a test case here, right? The Rory McIlroy versus Tyrrell Hatton group. If you expected Rory to make more birdies than Tyrrell Hatton, you would take the over on Rory McIlroy right here, right? So we are trying to find a fade, right? So we're going to take an under here. So I'm not going to take a Rory McIlroy. The 2 props that we're going to, it is Sepp Straka. We're taking the under on, so going with Russell Henley, who is his opponent there. And the other one was Cameron Tringale. We're taking Taylor Gooch. So let's talk through these. First and foremost with the Tringale versus Gooch group. Sorry, got to get used to talking about these props here. New category on the board, but it's Tringale. He's more of a short game specialist, right? He can gain with the approach play from time to time. He's inconsistent. He's just not one of my favorite players to begin with because of that inconsistency. And on the other side, really why I'm taking this prop and why I'm taking the under on Tringale is Taylor Gooch. Taylor Gooch today, if you were watching ESPN Plus, hit the ball unbelievably, hit pretty much every single fairway, gave himself 8 birdie putts out of his first 9 holes. Ridiculous ball striking numbers, and that was in the more difficult of the 2 waves. So even if it's windy tomorrow, they're playing through the conditions. He has shown an ability to handle that and handle it quite well. So he today just couldn't make any putts, even though he had all these birdie putts, did shoot just 1 under par on his front 9. But tomorrow, I'd expect him to have a lot more luck with the flat stick. You're talking about somebody who gains to the field with his putting, at least over the last 24 to the last 50 measured rounds. So as a result, expecting a huge bounce back there. So somebody I'm taking over Cameron Tringale. And lastly, we have Sepp Straka. So Sepp Straka there going against Russell Henley. And Straka, a solid player in his own right, but Russell Henley I slightly prefer. He's a amazing ball striker, always going to be one of the best players from tee to green, at least in terms of like a mid-tier guy, right? Of all the guys, they're maybe in that 50 to 100 to 1 range in terms of their outright odds. He's going to be one of the best ball strikers. The reason why you never bet him outright is his mental game, right? On Sundays, especially for events where he's leading, he really deals with choking issues. I mean, we've just seen it time and time again. That's why he's a middle tier player, because his shots gained metrics are along the elite of the elite when it comes to shots gained tee to green. So going against Sepp Straka, I like that consistency that you get with somebody that's so solid from tee to green. He's also somebody who's 4 over par. He has nothing to gain at this point. So kind of similar to a Colin Morikawa, who's also starting for way behind the pack. He's got to go out there tomorrow and make birdies to really do anything. And at this point, Russell Henley doesn't expect to win this event. So he's going to have nothing to lose out there. We'll be teeing off relatively early in the morning. And if we end up getting that weather delay, is going to go absolutely nuclear. So do like him at that birdie or better mark there. It gives us a second fade, right? And of course, the whole point of that is that takes us to a 12.5x parlay for the 5-leg flex there. Of course, if we change this to an over, unfortunately, it goes down to a 10x. So that's why we're trying to target the props that we are here for this 5x parlay. All right, that's all I've got for the prize picks preview. Before you hop on out of here, go ahead and let me know what your favorite prop on the board is down in the comments. Going to have even more content dropping for round 4. So if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, I would highly recommend you go ahead and do so you don't miss when that drops, but also when all of the other content for the rest of the PGA Tour schedule drops. Of course, I'm always dropping prize picks targets for all of those events, but also fantasy advice, also course breakdowns for every single venue. So a lot of stuff you don't want to miss. I appreciate all the support, guys. If you haven't already smashed that like button as well, make sure you go ahead and do so, and I'll see you guys next time.